Hello everyone, my name is Thomas and I'm an archivist from Antwerp, which is in Belgium. And I'm here today to talk about the Gevaert Paper Project. Sorry, I will be pronouncing it Gevaert, it's just muscle memory. I can't do it Gevaert, I will forget. So it will be the, it will be the Gevaert Paper Project. For the past 3 years, I've been working on the historical archive Agfa-Gevaert, and I'm here to talk today about the context of the archive, how it came to be in the custody of FOMU, and the project goals of the Gevaert Paper Project, and the main results as of this month, since the project has officially ended. So the Gevaert Paper Project hails from an enormous archive. The historical collection Agfa-Gevaert is about 400 meters long if you were to lay it out on an empty field, which is about 430 yards, if I did my math correctly. So the main question when we got the archive in our custody was, how do we get started on this? We can't just free up an employee to work on this full time, so we needed to find an entrance into it. Our head of collection decided to start with the history of analog photography, since it's a rapidly disappearing field of knowledge, and she got a grant by the Flemish government, and thus the Gevaert Paper Project was funded. Also fun because I saw another similar advertisement recently, or in an earlier presentation. This ad says Gevalux Fleur, the Stradivarius of photographic papers. The main project goals, which I've been working on for the past 3 years, have been to get a detailed condition assessment of the full archive done, so we have an idea what came over from the archive as it was stored in its previous location, since the bulk of it is being stored in an external depot, since it can't all fit on the FOMU grounds, to register and digitize the photographic paper packaging in the collection and in FOMU's own collection, and the information that is stored about it in the archive at large, and making this information accessible in a database. Lastly, I have cleaned and repackaged all photographic paper packages in an acid-free environment. A bit of historical background. I assume everyone here is somewhat familiar with Gevaert, but behind me you can see the man himself, Lieven Gevaert. He founded the company Gevaert in 1894. It'll be a crash course. I'm jumping ahead in time on the next slide. He was a professional photographer who used calcium paper, but he found that the supply, which he got from the neighboring countries, was unreliable and the quality was often poor. So in true entrepreneurial spirit, he started producing his own calcium paper. He soon established a large, broad product line in photographic paper, and in the 1920s, the company had branches all around the world. Now, the crash course is jumping way ahead. In 1964, the Gevaert merges with the German company Agfa, and this is also the catalyst for the formation of the archive. Gevaert had a strong bond between the employee and the employer. There were several company clubs for the employees. There was a strong social spirit, and in general, the employees felt very connected to the company. And one man, Laurent Roosens, who was retired, was unhappy with this merger and started collecting information and documents about the Gevaert company. This grew to be the very important historical collection. Now, Agfa keeps insisting that FOMU also has all information about the German Agfa company, even before the merger. Sadly, this is not true. I have done a condition assessment of the full archive, and there is not nearly as much about Agfa information present in the archive as there is about Gevaert, especially not of the inner company workings. Now, in 2015, Agfa-Gevaert decided they were no longer interested in hosting the archive on the company grounds. It was held in the Varenthof. On the picture you can see there a little castle near the company. And in 2017, FOMU acquired the bulk of the historical collection. Other small parts went to other players in Belgium. I think I can safely state that the historical collection Agfa-Gevaert is a unique piece of Belgian photographic history. I believe in Europe there is no collection that matches it. Of course, I'm speaking here near the Lens Media Lab where there is a collection that matches it. But the photographic paper, the photographic paper packaging, and especially the information and documentation about this photographic paper are a very important source of information on analog photography in the 20th century. Now, I've already covered this briefly. The materials in the Varenthof, the old castle, numbered about 400 meters, 434 yards, and there were also 220 cubic meters. I haven't recalculated this to yards, I'm sorry. Meters of objects and audiovisual material there. So it's an enormous collection of which the bulk is still held in an external depot. The most important parts for the project have been moved to the FOMU depots near the museum. Three main pillars of the collection, which were and are important to the Gevaert Paper Project, are the sub-collection assortment, the sub-collection documentheek, and the photographic paper samples collection. In the sub-collection assortment, there are about 500 hanging folders, which have information about basically every product Gevaert ever produced. About 100 of these hanging folders are about photographic paper. And in these hanging folders, there are trademark deposits, there's advertisements, there's instruction manuals, there's internal company memos about the production and the conception of papers. It's an invaluable source of information. In the sub-collection documentheek, which are held mainly in the purple boxes, you can see there's about 999 keywords, and also there you can find, well, basically anything you name about Gevaert will be covered in these keywords. It goes from the company grounds, the company buildings, to the employee clubs, to the involvement in the world wars, to, well, yeah, you name it, it's probably got it. And lastly, the photographic paper samples collection, of which I also mentioned FOMU's own. They are not a part of the historical collection, but still very important to the Gevaert Paper Project. It numbers about 2,100 samples, and the historical collection had about 100 samples that were all of Gevaert. FOMU's own collection is broader than Gevaert alone. This is me in 2020, when about 15 euro pallets worth of archive were moved to FOMU. Well, I've already covered this in the previous slides. The most interesting materials for the project were moved to FOMU proper. Now, the information in the archive that's interesting and that we've collated for use in the database are, oh yeah, I switched around a few slides here. Yeah. I'll just go from it. It didn't update, but the paper packaging is used as a base for a record in our database. So on a paper package, as the previous presentations also mentioned, you can see what kind of characteristics a paper had. This is always the base minimum information in our database. But of course, we don't have every package in our collection. So we try to fill these gaps with the instruction manuals. I think we have about 40 instruction manuals for Gevaert papers digitized, and these cover the different types of photographic papers that were produced, but also the paper development, the intended use, and so on and so forth. Here's an example instruction manual for Stripex. You'll never believe it, it was a stripping film. It covers the darkroom lighting, the development, and other special use cases for the paper. We usually have the French, English, and Dutch version. Sometimes more exotic languages are also present. Also in the sub-collection assortment are the trademark deposits, one of my favorite items. These are even held for papers that were never really produced, but only conceptualized. So we can start making history of papers. This is very valuable for research questions we often get in dating papers. So for example, one example is Orthobrom or Gevabrom. I forget the exact name of the paper, but there is a specific Brom paper which was deposited as a trademark in 1920, but only started being produced in 1950. That's one of the few things you can glean from these trademark deposits. They basically showcase the earliest stage of conception of a photographic paper. Behind me, one is of a paper that was, I think, never produced, Emeralda, and one that was definitely produced, the Blue Star paper. Also in the sub-collection assortment are advertisements, and these tell more about the target demographic of the different papers. Very briefly, I talked about each package which comes with a code. In this one, this is always the minimum information in our database. Redex 8Z is shorthand for a paper with a soft contrast, a glossy surface texture and a glossy reflection, and an underlayer with a white color. There were about a total of 55 codes Gevaert used, which cover surface texture, reflection, contrast, and color. Now, this is not typical museum data. They are linked to objects, but we had to find a different system to store this data in. They wouldn't fit in the collection management software. So we decided on using Wikibase to store this data, which is a private instance of Wikidata, and which hosts the record, coupled with a front end, which is a bit more user-friendly, because Wikibase just looks like Wikidata, which is not very attractive. Very briefly touch on our data model, which has 3 levels of data. I could talk about this for 50 minutes, so just very briefly. It has the top level product, in which we try to avoid repetition of data. So a product could be Redux, and there we store the information of where it was produced or which company produced it, which is always the same, and the date in which it was produced, which is also always the same. Then a product series is a code, which you saw earlier on the package, 8V, would have also always have the same information, surface texture, reflection, and so on. And a product instance is the instance of a product series in our collection. So an actual physical piece of photographic paper packaging. Here, if I have a minute left later, I might show the front end proper. I have a few screenshots to cover it as well. Basically, we have the front end, which is gevaert.fomu.be, which is more user-friendly than the back end, which is data.fomu.be, which is the Wikibase from which the front end pulls the data. It attempts to bring together everything, all the information we talked about in the previous slides. The front end comes with a free search, but it also has powerful search tools, such as Sparkle queries. And terminology, which is a hornet's nest and was already an issue in 1936. I believe Paul also talked about it on the Q&A. I have had interesting discussions about it with my Dutch colleagues of SBMK, also with the Lens Media Lab. And basically, we decided, also the photographic industry, which is the quote you see there in German, already lamented this issue in 1936, in which they were saying, please make up your mind, you manufacturers, and choose some terms that mean the same thing. The solution for us is to make a manufacturer's term with a qualifier. We, as a photographic museum, don't claim to make any statements about these terms. We just say, Gevaert used this term, and this is a definition according to the manufacturer. So we never claim to make a statement about what smooth, for example, means. This is a screenshot from the backend, so data.fomu.be, which looks exactly like Wikipedia or Wikidata, which is not very attractive. But this is the front end. So on the main page, you can see, basically, you can browse on the product series, you can browse in the trademarks, you can browse in the instruction manuals. If you click through, you go to the page of the product series, in which you can click through again and get this page, in which you can see the date range and the related documents. So the trademark deposit, if it's available, the instruction manual, if it is available. Finally, as a sort of crown jewel on the project, we have produced an exposition. It's called, I'm not sure how to translate it actually. It's basically called Old Paper, photo paper from the Gevaert archive. It's meant as a play on words. In the center, you can see a piece we purchased from Alison Rossiter, produced on Gevaert paper, expired Gevaert paper. And the whole exposition is basically made with archival documents from the historical collection, which is a bit of a shift from what we usually do in our expositions. It also has 2 videos, one of which is an artist video on the work produced by Alison Rossiter, and the other one highlights the importance of the Gevaert archive. Our main partners for the project were the Government of Flanders for funding the project, MEMO, the Flemish Institute for Digital Support to Cultural Heritage, for semantic support, our choice of Wikibase and guidance in hosting it, Professional Wiki and TIB for hosting and troubleshooting the Wikibase instance. And I also want to thank the Lens Media Lab in Yale for hosting me here, for inviting me here, and for taking care of all the travels. Finally, thank you for your attention. If you have any questions about Gevaert or the archive, please contact me. My email is there.